Hi, my name is Renee Hobbs. I am here with the last class for COM 416 propaganda in spring 2017 semester. Who's on the call here? I see Mira, I see Nicole, I see Nikita, I see Zoe, Kaylin, and Hong Yan. So just a few of you, but I am so glad you're here. And isn't it a wonderful and awful thing to come to the end of the semester, right? So that's all I can say. Really my job tonight is to try to explain what I think you learned, which is kind of impossible. And so you're going to have to help me, right? But I think if you help me, we are going to have a really great synthesis of the course. And that is going to really help you with your last assignment, which is Leap 4, right? Create to learn. So you might have wondered about my flower crown, right? Of course, it's not that I am going to be the next YouTube celeb collabing with my friends, Zoe, and making YouTube videos. No, not me. I don't do that. But I'm here in San Antonio, Texas, and I'm here for a really important meeting of the American Educational Research Association. I'm talking about our work in digital literacy with, I don't know how many thousands of people are here, but I just got finished with my presentation, so I got a chance to talk to about 40 people today. It was very exciting. I get good feedback on my work, which is how I keep learning, right? I present my ideas and then other people critique them, and that's how I learn. And one of the joys of teaching online is that I can maintain this a crazy travel schedule, which lets me be an active, research engaged faculty member. But there's probably one thing that I don't know if you guys fully appreciate, which is that this is the first time that I've taught this class propaganda, and I bet you remember at the beginning of the semester me saying how totally scary it was to try to teach this intimidating topic, with its incredibly intimidating, huge scale. Right? What an impossible topic to try to address in just one semester, right? People could spend a lifetime studying this topic, right? And it's still too big for anybody. So as I've been reflecting about my own learning as I teach this class, I feel really grateful because you all have, in so many ways, you all have helped me to learn, right? And so I just wanted to, at the very outset, to acknowledge how, in part of what I was doing today and reflecting on the day was looking at your Flipgrid comments and rereading your Leap 1 about propaganda in your childhood, and looking at the screencasts and video work you did, rereading some of the essays that you wrote. And so just a big shout out to all of you for helping me figure out what there is to learn about this topic of propaganda by offering your own good insights on the issue. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the structure for tonight's class. So the topic is parting words, or otherwise known as The Future is Ours. And give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen right now. Can you guys see my screen? Okay, good show. So I'm hoping that other students will join us once they figure out. This link is now working if you refresh your screen. Why don't we go around the room and talk about two topics. Highlights and lowlights about learning about propaganda, and highlights and lowlights of this approach to online learning. Have you guys ever played, give me a thumbs up if you've ever played the game of highlights and lowlights before. No, put your thumb down if you've never played highlights and lowlights. Okay. All right, so let me explain how highlights and lowlights work. This is a very big, long tradition at the Media Education Lab. Part of the process of being a learner is being a reflective learner. And that's really hard to do because, you know, just like there's so many deadlines and so much deadline pressure and you're just too busy. And so what's a fast, easy way to promote reflection? It's called highlights and lowlights. And the game has a few rules. We go around the room and everybody shares a highlight. That's like something good. And a lowlight, that's like less good, right? It could be awful, or it could just be less good, right? So a highlight, something good, and a lowlight, less good. As we go around the room, we listen to each other's highlights and lowlights, and we try not to be redundant. Like, so if somebody says something that was your highlight, you can't go, oh yeah, what she said. You have to think of another highlight, right? Same with lowlights, right? So we try not to repeat each other, because what's the point of that? But we're really just reflecting on our own experience. And one of the ways we indicate that is that we don't comment or make remarks or respond to each other's sharing. It's like your highlight is your highlight. Your lowlight is your lowlight. And we just go around the room and share those, right? So no judgment, no evaluation, no commentary. Just share a highlight and a lowlight. It's a really personal thing, and it's really designed to invite you to think about like your own experience in this course. And what's really clear is that you each had a unique experience with learning about propaganda. No two students in this class had the same learning experience. That's for sure. No two students had the same learning experience because you each found your own path through this particular kind of course. So we're going to go around the room. First, we'll do the highlights. Then we'll do the lowlights, okay? And if you can comment on the two topics, that would be great. Really, we're trying to reflect on what were the highlights and lowlights about learning about propaganda, and what were the highlights and lowlights about the way we learned it. So what we learned and how we learned it. Give me a thumbs up if you understand what we're doing now. All right, so now let's see. Who wants to go first?
I can go first.
Kaylin.
So what we learned and how we learned?
Yeah.
Okay. For highlights about what we learned, I liked that there was a wide variety of topics. I don't think, like, I kind of assumed it would be mostly Nazi propaganda because that's just the biggest thing I think of or the first thing that I think of when I think of propaganda. And I also don't think I ever would have gotten any exposure to Chinese or Russian propaganda at URI if it weren't for this class. And then as far as how we learned it, meeting once a week and kind of reading independently allowed me to go at my own pace. I think that was a highlight.
Thanks for sharing. Who wants to go next?
I can go next.
Anya?
My highlight for this course is I got be able to meet people from different region in the States, and the Zoom, the group meeting, the group discussion is also very good for me because I got to listen to different voices about propaganda. And I feel that I have learned a lot about propaganda because I don't know this propaganda. I mean, when I just came here, and this word is a big word. I never know what propaganda include. And then after this course, I know, wow, propaganda include a lot of stuff. Yeah, and then I like the online learning because it's so flexible, and that people have to travel to the school. Because here the transportation is so difficult in the States. There's no public transportation. In China, we travel to school very easily. We have school bus and we have the public transportation. Here, I feel because I don't have a car, if I have to travel to the URL for this course, then it is so inconvenient for me because I also have a 5-year-old with me. So this online, I mean, this is the first time for me to take the online course. I think it is very effective and efficient and very convenient for people.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for sharing. Who's next? Nicole and then Mira.
One of my highlights was definitely listening to Dr. Lisa from Temple University speak. I thought that was something that really added to the section and something I don't think I would have gotten to experience or hear her speak if it wasn't for this class, which I found really valuable. And as far as the online learning, I think all the different tools that we used kind of had a different way of using them, and there was kind of a learning curve if you had never used them before, but I found them to kind of make it more fun. In each week you had to do something different, which made it a lot more fun.
Thanks for sharing. Mira.
So a highlight about what we learned would definitely be about the history and just the background of propaganda. I was surprised to find out how organized it actually kind of is on the back end. And another in the same vein, Trust Me, I'm Lying was a big highlight. I really enjoyed it. I am gonna go through and actually reread the whole thing. But I thought that was a very cool element. I guess I can couple over to the online learning, but I also enjoyed that we were able to, we had our regular weekly meeting, but the ran a little ad hoc Twitter communications where it's a way, it was a friendly reminder just so you don't put everything off until Wednesday, that kind of thing. So and exactly what everyone else is saying, but online classes are the absolute lifeblood of how I can actually finish my degree. So that's awesome in general, but it's always great when you have a professor who's engaged in a class that's engaged. And I've had it the other way around and it kind of sucked. So this was a very, very good experience.
Thanks for sharing. Who's next? Nikita? Oh, turn on your microphone, girl. We can't hear you. We can't hear you. Microphone not working.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Now we can hear you.
Sorry about that. I think my headphones aren't working. So I'll just quickly second that and say there's no way I could have finished my degree without online classes. So this is really great. I think a highlight is sort of like the mix of readings that we had, a book that talked about really old propaganda from like World War II, even World War I, and then reading the articles from The Atlantic, which sort of put it in a more contemporary context. So that was really interesting. And then learning how to synthesize like all of the information that we were getting and consolidating into them like into a tweet or a Flipgrid comment. That was definitely a low light at first. I was like, oh my God, we're using so many different things. But once you got the hang of it, it became a massive highlight.
Cool, thanks for sharing. Okay, so Zoe, do you want to share a highlight and a highlight of the what we learned and how we learned it?
Sure. My highlight is the engagement that we have during class and seeing the growth of depth in terms of our discussion. And I learned so much from just hearing from each person's personal experiences and perspectives. I think that was really important. However, one thing that I meant to say it last week, but I was like lost my voice. But is that I want to bring that up that for some topics in propaganda which we don't really know about, it's important to keep a critical perspective on it. Not just everyone has their own interpretation and perspective on certain topics. So it's important to keep a critical perspective on it, not to simply believe or trust any source or any speech. And how we learn is that it's a very exciting for us to learn in and out of class. We have 1 hour in class and it was very intense, exciting as well. But outside of class, we have Twitter. We, conduct discussions, and seeing everyone on Twitter is a whole another level of excitement. So very much enjoying it. And I hope that we keep in touch, this group of people, and we keep our conversation go beyond this semester as well.
Well, that's a great point. Of course, you guys will always be on my Com 416 list forever. So just, if you're staying on Twitter, I'll be monitoring you probably through that list. But now we're turning to the lowlights, right? So the lowlight sharing is like, and we're doing that about 2 topics. Learning about propaganda. The less, the problem, the challenge, the not fun, the yuck part, and the lowlights of online learning. So again, we're just speaking personally. We're not commenting on each other's work, and it's just an open forum. There were lowlights to this class. I experienced some lowlights, and so did you. Who wants to go first? Kaylin.
I'll start off again. I think something that was tough, at least for me, was the new kind of programs about how we learned. Like, I'd never done a screencast. I was really nervous. I didn't do as well as I wanted to on that. So that was just kind of hard for me. Another kind of low light is that maybe there's how many people in this class, and I don't know if like all of us ever made it. So that I think it would have been a lot different if more people were available at this time, even though it was kind of a tough time. And then something about learning about propagandas, I feel like it's made me maybe a little too skeptical moving forward. Just like not being able to trust like people in power and like the government and stuff. Not that anyone should ever be too trusting, but I feel like I might kind of question it a little bit too much now and not know what's true.
Thank you for sharing. Who wants to go next? What were your lowlights?
I can go next.
Hong-Yen, lowlights.
Lowlights about propaganda is because I am not a media education major. So this propaganda and social media is new to me. So I have sometimes I have trouble in following the class because sometimes I have trouble in understanding the paper, and sometimes I don't have time for reading. So I sometimes I cannot follow, but that is because that is my problem. It's not because of about the course. So this is because this propaganda is new to me. I'm an English literature major student. I'm not a social media student. So this is a little bit frustrating to me at the very beginning. And then the low light about online learning is the digital literacy. I mean, the students who have a high digital literacy should be able to follow it very good. But for me, I got a new computer, and in the beginning, I still remember in the beginning when Renee asked us to watch the video, and I'm struggling where the video is, So I have that technical problems for me for the online learning. And now lately, I'm getting so familiar to the tech, to the Zoom meeting. And then today I know this is the last course. So that is another low light for me. This is the end of this course. But I wanted to continue, but now it's end. So that is the low light for me.
Thank you for sharing. Who's next? Low lights, Nicole.
One low light for me was about probably the terrorism propaganda, just because it is such a heavy subject, and I don't really like learning about terrorism because it is so heavy. But it was interesting to learn about. But like the articles about the beheading videos and things like that, it's just such a heavy subject. And then with using Twitter, this was my first time using Twitter. So sometimes I would get frustrated with the character amount that you could use, and it's difficult to really concisely put into that amount of characters what you want to say. So it was a challenge for me.
Thank you so much for sharing. Mira, lowlights. Mira, we can't hear you.
Okay, better. Yeah. Okay. As you went through in the beginning, there's a lot of content, a lot to take in, and a low light that I guess experienced at times would be it was hard to wrap some of this was hard to wrap my head around just in 1 week's time, and sort of immediately moving on to something that was, you know, perhaps in the same vein but also wildly different. I mean, it was great that we were able to spend a few weeks on Nazi propaganda. I wish we had been able to do something similar for the other topics, particularly with modern propaganda, just to take a better look at both sides. I mean, I think we, you know, fit a lot in a really small amount of time, but that there were definitely some topics that I would have liked to be able to carry on farther. And then about how we learned, I am like pretty much the opposite of Nikita, as I swear to God, I don't think I could handle another media platform between mostly the ones where we had to like do comments, like all these extensions, and my computer's like, so, and it also kind of made it, I had a hard time keeping track. I'd have to go back and look to see, okay, I know I put this response, and if I didn't have it saved in a Word doc, I'm like, all right, where did I post this one? Where did I post that one, kind of thing. So, but again, that's a little bit more of an issue with my own, like, technical issues, but I
very much appreciate that. That's very, very good feedback. Thank you.
Cool.
Nikita and then Zoe, low light.
So a low light was learning how to like pace myself, because we did only meet once a week, but we had like, kind of a lot of stuff to do in that 1 week, and they were very varied. So it was like reading out of the book, being online, and doing the comments. And so at first I was like waiting until like Wednesday night or even Thursday morning, and then I was getting really stressed out. I definitely got better by the end of the semester. So that was a low light until you got used to it. And then for learning about propaganda, I would say, hang on, I wrote down because I knew I would forget as soon as I started talking. Oh, it's kind of like it's kind of what Mary said. It's like a massive topic, and I feel like as soon as it started to really come together, and I even started reading about it outside of class and getting like really engaged, like the class ended, and I wish there was a part 2.
Thank you for sharing. It's true. We're just starting to understand this topic, and now it's over. Zoe, what were some low lights for you this semester?
Sure. Low lights is, in terms of how we learn is sometimes I acknowledge that technology do fail us. Sometimes, you know, network doesn't work, or, you know, video or something that doesn't work, that has something that we have to get used to it. And another thing is that although I did say that a lot of us are really connected in and out of class, but I'm not quite sure if some of the other students are as connected as the others. You know, and to collaborate online, sometimes maybe we do encounter some challenges, and with also the time limitations that sometimes might create some problems. Yeah.
Great observation. And for those of you who are watching this live because you're not here, right? And so I'm thinking of Stan and Dre and Matt and Francesca and others. We know that the opportunity to have at least two-dimensional or virtual dialogue has really been valuable as part of the learning experience, because learning is a social process, right? And so even small acts of social engagement can really deepen learning. And in online learning, it shouldn't really be a solitary march through the content. It should be a social process. And one thing I was really proud about everybody is that you guys did a digital collaboration. You worked with a partner to create an academic paper and an infographic, right? And that was pretty impressive. Very much evidence of the kind of work we expect college seniors who are going to be entering the workplace to engage in. So in general, I feel like you should really give yourselves a pat on the back for the depth and the quality of the work that you did this semester. For me, the highlight was actually seeing the great creativity in this community. Whoa! So that was the funnest part of the class for me, and I learned a lot from your creative choices and your creative way of expressing yourself, and your thoughtfulness and reflectiveness was really a meaningful thing to me. A low light, and I definitely, wrote this down. You guys all said it. Too much content, too little time. And so now that means next time I teach the class, I have to think a little bit about, less is more, so they say, right? So what can I get rid of and still have it be a meaningful learning experience? So that's what I'll be thinking about this summer as I prepare to teach this class again. Okay, so, oh, sorry, that's the wrong, what did I, oops, I'm trying to share my screen with you, but it's not working out that well. Let me see if
I just had it shared and then it went away.
Did I? Okay, sorry about that. Is that's, give me a thumbs up if you're seeing my screen now. Okay, great. So one of my traditions that I've been doing for, I don't know, maybe 20 years is a visual synthesis, right? You see, I'm a visual thinker, and when I'm taking notes in a lecture or planning to write a paper or planning to create a videotape, I draw pictures. I draw pictures and I draw words and I put lines between them, and that's how I figure out. What I think I know, right? Because actually, all my new ideas are really just me taking an idea from somebody else and an idea from somebody else, and right? That's how new ideas are created. There are new ideas under the sun. We humans create by combining. Combinatorial creativity is the heart of how new ideas happen, right? So for me, drawing pictures to show links between ideas is how I find new ideas. So for 20 years, every time I get to the end of the semester, I make a visual picture to represent what I think the course was about. So as I'm sharing my screen with you now, you can get a chance to look at that, and I guess I'll share with you the big picture. If you like, you can open up the link, and so you can see the drawing big too. Because at this point, I'm just going to ask you to take a look at it for a few minutes, and I'm going to ask you to see if you can remember some of the parts of the course that I have illustrated in the drawing. So let's just take a few minutes and read the drawing first, and then I'll ask you to identify some of the parts of the course that you remember. Okay, so you probably had a chance to take a look at this drawing. What's one idea, picture, or phrase that you remember, and can you call it out and explain it to us? Nikita, I'm calling on you, girl, because I see you looking at that picture. You're looking at it.
I was like, where is it? I was just thinking about the movie Look Who's Back. I totally forgot about it. And I guess I'm trying to remember what my thoughts were on that movie, but sort of the amazement that, and how it could happen today, where a figure like Hitler could potentially come back to life, and people will accept him because, you know, maybe they already have sort of similar views, and once something becomes accepted, people feel like empowered to follow it. And some of the techniques he used to gain followers, I can't totally remember how I felt about it. I had a lot of feelings about that movie, but I forgot about it till I just saw that drawing.
Yeah, he had a lot of techniques. He went on talk shows, right? He did reality TV. He had a lot of forms of contemporary propaganda. And at the end of that movie, we were shown some of the realities that are being faced right now as, well, in this case, as France prepares for its election, Germany prepares for its election. So we see the relevance of contemporary propaganda in Europe today. Thanks for sharing. What's another word, idea, or picture from the drawing that you remember? Kaylin.
Something I kind of forgot about, but I looked back on a couple times, was the Coney 2012. Like, at the time when we brought that up in class, it was kind of a blast from the past, because I feel like that happened when I was like a junior in high school, and I like didn't even really remember it until like we brought it up, and I was like, wow, that was a huge example like in my lifetime, and how that's when we kind of learned about the 4 like main criteria of like relating to audience needs, activating emotion, simplifying information, and attacking opponents. And those 4 in that one document are something that I definitely went back on several times during the class to kind of like use to evaluate what we were learning in other weeks.
Nice. Thank you for sharing. And I also appreciate that you guys experienced Coney 12 when you were younger, right? And so I loved how you explained that our experience of it in the context of this class kind of forces you to kind of confront your younger self, and now you're about to be college graduate self, right? So I really appreciate that. You know, Coney 2012 still is the most viral video of all time, having reached 100 million views in just 7 days, right? So right now, if we're trying to understand virality and the impact of viral media on public opinion, Coney 2012 we're going to be studying it for years, right? It's that important. So I'm glad you saw the little corner of the page there and remembered that. Who wants to go next? Pull out something from the chart and help me remember. What do you remember? Mira.
Just throughout the entire image, there's a bunch of lists on there that align to certain topics that we covered. But what it reminded me of, and what really helped, I think, was like a pivot point for me throughout the semester, when I really thought I had like a little aha moment, like was when we did we spent some time going over the role of like the propaganda analyst. I think it was in the hall. No, it was one of the readings. But it's almost like it was like when you try to learn, when someone tells you how to do math, and like you kind of have to see it the other way around first. It was like kind of like a reverse engineering thing on how to analyze propaganda, and that helped in a weird way. Kind of helped me wrap my arms a little bit more around, the other side of it. So that was helpful.
Wow, nice point. And I tried to represent that in a couple of different ways. Of course, I tried to represent the Jewett and O'Donnell ideas for analyzing propaganda around the cloud of propaganda. Do you see those words? Author, message, purpose, context, format, techniques, audiences, and impact. That's 8 of the Jewett and O'Donnell. They had 10. I didn't think all 10 of them were that great. So that's 8 of the criteria. And then I also tried to represent it down in the center with the media literacy remote control. Do you guys remember that? Where we asked, who's the author and what's the purpose, and what techniques are used to attract and hold my attention, and what values are represented, and how might different people interpret this, and what's left out. And in that sense, we were moving through that process of accessing information, analyzing it, creating media, ourselves, reflecting on it, and then doing something with it. So that idea of critical analysis is really a big part of this course, and it's represented in a bunch of different ways here. So I'm glad you spotted that. Okay, who haven't I heard from? Nicole, can you call out one part of the chart that you remember learning about and tell us what it was?
Yeah, I think the fake news, where you have disinformation, hoaxes, satire, and parody, I think it was kind of good timing because of how much fake news is out there in our society today, and trying to figure out what's fake news, what isn't fake news, is so relevant today.
Yeah, boy, we sure did have a reality. Reality definitely cooperated with this class, didn't it? Right? Because we were experiencing propaganda and then talking about it the next week. I remember that one time when we watched the Caitlyn Jenner Pepsi Lives Matter, right? Because like that's what people were talking about on Twitter. That's what my friends were talking about. So we had to talk about that as a form of propaganda as well. Zoe, do you see something on this chart that you remember that we did during the semester that was meaningful to you?
Sure. I was also gonna comment on Pepsi, but also I really like is your drawing. Is that a portrait of Donald Trump on partisanship and democracy? Yeah,
it's a stylized representation of a politician with hair.
Exactly. Yeah, I really like that part, and I remember we talked about partisanship and analyzing, the videos that Anderson Cooper was doing, and we talked about different perspectives and what kind of perspective he put in his reporting.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Thanks so much. Hong Yan, do you see something on this chart that you remember and can relate to and can tell us about?
Yeah, I think the fake news is the something I'm most interested, because before I take this course, I think all the news are true, and then when I know there's fake news and I begin to identify there is so much fake news in my WeChat list. So every time when people send something in China, and then they will forward it, and then everybody is forwarding, and then later we found out that is fake news. They may have something like somebody's kid is in a bad health condition, and they want us to donate money to it. So this is donation kind of news is allowed in the WeChat. And then we all think they are real stories, and later we find out they are fake. They are just trying to attract people's attention, trying to attract people's sympathy, and trying to get more money from us. So I realized that there are a lot of fake news in my WeChat. So it's critical. This critical thinking ability is, my critical thinking ability is improved during this course, because before that I take everything for granted. I think, oh, they are true. I never think there's something wrong with it or not.
Thank you very much for sharing. I wanted to add one more voice to this project, and Nikita, that is adorable, I have to admit. But I wanted to showcase, Nikita, your Flipgrid response, which is absolutely amazing, and I've been thinking about.
Hey, Kaylin. So talking about the concept of corrections being made to stories that maybe have things that aren't true in them, and people not paying attention to that really freaked me out too, because I sort of thought to myself, how many stories have I read that did have these mistakes in them or just were entirely false that I never saw the follow-up correction to. So, as a result, how many false beliefs do I have floating around in my head? So I will definitely also change the way I look at the media I consume going forward after reading this book.
Whoa. I will totally admit that comment made my head explode about potential research questions. And Nikita, I think that's a topic that has not been very well explored in literature. I do not think we as scholars have a good understanding of how much misinformation have people absorbed because they missed the correction. And so now it's like hard for me to sleep because I find myself thinking, well, how would you measure that? And how could we look at that? And how could we begin to start to understand that? Because that is probably a feature of being, growing up and being on the planet at this point in time with this kind of media system. That idea really captured my attention. Now, I want to turn, I'm really aware of how little time we have, and so I want to spend a little bit of time on these 4 questions. And again, because we're such a small group tonight, I think we should just do it as a small group because we're just a small group tonight. So which of these questions do you want to talk about? How has your use of media and technology changed since taking this course? Can people really resist the lure of powerful propaganda? Why or why not? How can you use what you learned in this class to be a better communicator? And what questions do you wonder about as we conclude this class? So I wonder about Nikita's question about how much misinformation we absorb. That just seems to me a really interesting question. Which of these questions do you want to comment on? Nikita.
One question I've had throughout pretty much the whole semester is that question of can we really resist propaganda? And once we sort of learn to recognize one form of propaganda, it seems like it transforms into an even more subtle form. And then I also wonder how much more subtle can it possibly get? But, I feel like propagandists will always sort of adapt. So yeah, I guess I've had the same question. I think we can. I'm not sure how. I think probably through wanting to and through education and through really understanding why it's important. But yeah, I've been wondering about that the whole semester.
Thanks very much for sharing. What other questions would you like to comment on?
I want to continue Nikita's point, and if we can or cannot resist powerful propaganda. As we learned, there are, what's the point, right? There are harmful propaganda, or are they beneficial propaganda? If it is beneficial propaganda, how do you look at it? If it's harmful propaganda, how do you look at it, right? And again, I think that it's important to keep a critical thinking and open mind to look at those issues, not just to resist, immediately or to accept it immediately. Just kind of think about it and what does this kind of propaganda has to do in our society or in your life to be able to make a wise decision on resisting or not resisting.
Zoe, one of the reasons why I like that comment so much is that you're suggesting that, there's some people who have this knee-jerk reaction to propaganda, right? They have an opinion, right?
Right.
Maybe it's a superficial opinion. Maybe it's a not well-informed opinion. Maybe it's an emotional opinion. And you're suggesting that to really understand contemporary propaganda and historic propaganda, we have to actually tolerate complexity, right? We have to see the gray areas. We have to be open to the fact that this is a really complicated topic. If you think about it, for 3,000 years, people have been trying to define propaganda, and we're still arguing about it. right? So it shows you it's a really complicated topic. And I love your point that we don't want to oversimplify this topic because it resists oversimplification. And the whole point is for us to stretch and tolerate those nuances and that ambiguity. So we're back to the questions. Mira, which of these questions do you want to comment on?
Well, kind of following up on what Zoe was saying, I sort of have been wondering, and as the semester went on, we kind of talked more about it, but not only are there so many conflicting definitions of propaganda, I'd be curious to know of, each one its own evolution of its own definition. You know what I'm saying? Kind of like how many, we have a million terms, but I'm curious as to each one of those terms, like what their sort of, how they got to their present definition.
I am so happy that interests you because, I found myself when we learned about the People's Radio in the Nazi propaganda, I found myself going, radio was never part of my, dominant media in my childhood or growing up. That happened way, way earlier. Like my mom experienced that, but I never did. And I started thinking about how propaganda on the radio must have been a completely other kind of experience for people of that generation, people of the 1930s. I mean, think of it. You're living in rural West Virginia, right? Or you're out in Oklahoma and you're getting messages, powerful, attention-getting messages from some charismatic speaker who's telling you what to think. And because thought leadership is a natural part of being human, those charismatic speakers on the radio are naturally going to be influencing you. So I do think it's interesting to think about how each medium and form probably has its own complicated and interesting history that we could delve into. Okay, so last chance on the questions that are in our little chart here. Okay, I got to ask you, how can you use what you learned in this class to be a better communicator? In other words, to be a better propagandist.
Yeah.
How can you use what you learned in this class to be a better propagandist?
To criticize about media.
Okay, that's definitely.
Yeah.
Why does that make you a better communicator, Hongyan?
Because when you criticize something, you got opinion there, and then you develop your own individual, independent thinking and ideas in your mind. So it's definitely will improve people's critical thinking ability.
Great point. How can you use what you learned in this class to be a better communicator or propagandist?
One thing I noticed that throughout the entire semester was the importance of sort of recognizing the needs of your audience. And then, so if you have a message, sort of playing to that need, because it's something that Hitler did. And it's something, when we talk about the Russians, how they're sort of able to come in because we have so much instability in our government right now. So they're able to sort of play to that want to hear these things. And so if you can recognize that and sort of tie your message to that need, then you'll be probably pretty successful.
Boy, that is a powerful idea. Myself, I've been thinking a lot this semester about story and how propagandists often use story and narrative, right? So they use humor, they use story, they use strong emotion. And I know that as a communicator myself, I don't use enough stories, right? I feel reluctant to tell my own personal stories. I don't use story. I'm an academic. I'm not used to being a storyteller. And I've been thinking a lot about how if I could get better at telling stories, I'd probably be more effective as a propagandist and maybe as a professor too. So anyway, that's part of my journey. All right, I can't let you go without just making a little a pitch. I am really looking forward to these Leap 4s. And I woke up in the middle of the night last night, because at the end of the semester, I get all nervous about what did you learn? And did you learn enough? Did you get your money's worth? I worry about these things. And I started thinking, I hope everybody understands how to do well on the Leap 4, because I'm not really confident that you do. So I just want to take 6 minutes or 5 minutes and talk a little bit about the idea behind Leap 4. Obviously, tonight I've provided you with a really jump start to engaging in Leap 4, because you've got my drawing, right? But I'll tell you, one of the things that is fascinating is, first I drew my drawing, right? And then I started to try to synthesize what I think I learned. And I did it with like a top 10 list, like in David Letterman, a kind of top 10 list, top 10 list thing that you learned. And really the practice of making connections between ideas, it takes time, it's hard, and I'm not done yet, but I'm going to have my synthesis. I'm going to do Leap 4, right? Just like you guys are. And I'll post my synthesis to the website on May 4th, just like you will. But I want to make sure that you have a, oh, hold on. I've lost my, oh, there we go. I want to make sure that you have a good understanding of what to expect from Leap 4. And I've lost my page now, so let me see if I can go back to that again. Share screen. Come on now, baby. Where are you? Oh, there it is. Okay, sorry. It's so not easy to find. Okay, so this is actually kind of a reflection experience. And you have to compose 2 forms of media of your choice. You have to step back and think a bit more deeply about what you've learned. You have to summarize information, analyze it, and make connections between ideas that are most meaningful to you. One great way to start is by looking at the relationship between your Leap 1, your Leap 2, and your Leap 3. I bet if you lay out what you learned from Leap 1, Leap 2, and Leap 3, you will find some cool connections there, right? Because I definitely want you to not just reflect on ideas, but build bridges between the course ideas and your own identity. And I want you to experiment with expressing ideas using different modes of expression. So there's a long list of any 2 formats. You can use any 2 formats. You can make an animation video and a social media storify, a podcast, and a set of 15 original memes, right? And you can click on this link to find out how to do that really easily. But here's the important part. As you guys have been noticing, when I send you your email, as you received your email for Leap 3, I have to be fair to students, I have to evaluate your work from a set of criteria. So please read every sentence of the criteria for evaluation, right? Because if you create 2 media forms, but you don't reflect on the key ideas and information of the course, I'm gonna ding ya, If you don't reflect by summarizing, analyzing, and synthesizing information from the course readings and videos, it's gonna cost you, right? If you haven't gathered new information, that's gonna be a problem, because you're not just spitting back ideas that we learned. You actually have to go out and get some new stuff, right? You have to go do your own research process a little bit, right? Looking at sources you've gathered independently. You have to make connections between ideas and explain how they're meaningful to you. You have to think a little bit about your own experience as a learner and find a way to incorporate that into your Leap 4. Your work should be creative and original, and in it, you should demonstrate a strong understanding of contemporary propaganda. Your work should be well organized and informative. And you should make choices about which format to use and think about the distinctive characteristics of each format. For example, there are things you can do with a podcast, right? Using the power of story, the power of memory, the power of voice. You can interview people. You can do all kinds of interesting things with a podcast. And you can't do those same things with an infographic. Infographic, as we learned, is really good for comparing and contrasting, right? It's really good for presenting data, right? So make sure that you choose carefully so that your form and your content makes sense. Because if you're just, I'll pick on you, Nikita. If you're just picking a meme because, wow, that's so easy, right? 15 memes and a sequence of images with music. If it's just because it's easy, then probably that's not the right reason, right? So make sure that you're considering the distinctive characteristics of each format that you're using in deciding how to organize and present ideas and information. And don't forget, those two media things that you create are going to be on your blog, as is a works cited list in APA format. All right, so if you guys have any questions about Leap 4, I am waiting with bated breath, available 24 hours a day via Twitter to answer any question you might have. And Nikita, I see your hand is raised. What question do you have?
Is it due at 7 or midnight?
Ooh, it's due at midnight. If it says May, it's due on, when is it due? May 4th, right?
Yeah.
Holy moly, it's due May 4th at midnight. Okay, what other questions do you have? You guys know that if you do have questions, the best way to reach me is on the Twitter sphere. I'm able to chat with you by phone anytime now in the next 2 weeks. So if you're thinking about something and you're not quite sure and you're feeling nervous and you know Leap 4 is worth 150 points and it's like this could be the difference between an A and a B in this class, you know, don't lose sleep over it. Just give me a call, call me, all right? And don't wait to the last minute. How many times? I'm not going to say that again, but I am going to invite us to do something we always do every class at the end. Usually I'm the one to lead in the handshake, in the hand signal thing, but now let's all each choose our own goodbye hand signals. Okay, so hands on screen, ladies. All right, there you are. Now, you get to do anything you want to say goodbye, because we're saying goodbye come 416. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. We're doing crazy hand signals. All right, see you next time. Thanks for being a part of the class, you guys.
Thank you, Renee.
And happy summer. Bye-bye.
Bye.